This week, we welcome back a Walk-In's Welcome favorite, Andrew Doyle.
The liberal project, according to classical liberalism, is you prioritize individual freedom and that everyone gets to live their life as they want so long as they don't impede on the rights of others. And that means that if you see an example of racial discrimination or racism, you stand up against it and you tackle it and you deal with it. And that was working because things were getting better. They weren't perfect. But the problem is that the critical race theorists, they explicitly said, we are an anti-liberal movement because liberalism doesn't work, because racism still exists. But because the liberal project was never saying we've reached this utopian endpoint where it doesn't exist anymore. It was like, this is an ongoing thing. It's not going to happen overnight. And it was working. If you compare the way that race relations were working in the 1960s to how they were in the 2010s before all this kicked off, it was definitely going in the right direction. Huge progress had been made. And then I feel like the woke swooped in and just fucked it.
This is Walk-In's Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you are welcome. You know the drill. Please subscribe, rate, comment, share, reach out, tell your friends, send smoke signals, whatever. We love your feedback and we want to hear from you. If you like our work and want to support us, the best way to do that is join Phetasy.com. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes content, outtakes, discounts on merch, and the ability to submit questions for some of our upcoming guests. Support your favorite scrappy little internet heroes at Phetasy.com. All righty. I'm with Andrew Doyle, everybody. Welcome to Walk-In's Welcome. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's been, a couple of years now, I think.
It has been. And I think this is your third time on, is it not?
I think it is, but I think it was pre-pandemic when I was with you before,
Has it been that long?
I think so. Although
I
did come to LA halfway through the pandemic in one of those sort of gaps where you were suddenly allowed to travel just momentarily. And I snuck in there, I think. So it might have been there.
Yeah, I feel like it was. Did you write this beautiful book during the pandemic? Your new Puritans book?
Yeah, I did. I wrote it in the last year of the pandemic, which is, it was a good use of time.
Yeah. How's it go? How's the book doing?
Really well, yeah. And I'm glad that it's that people have enjoyed it and that people understand what I was trying to do with it. You know, I was sort of keen to try and write as much of my thoughts about the culture war as possible in the hope that I'd never have to write about it ever again. You know, just put everything into the book and then I'm done. I can sort of back away. But I don't think that's realistic, is it?
I need to do that. That's what I want to do. I need to just write it all down, get it out, and then never talk about it again.
Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Your book is called The New Puritans, How the Religion of Social Justice Captured the Western World. And I feel like there's been a lot of talk about this. You know, there have been a few books that have been, I feel like yours is very well researched, and you actually go into the history of, even in your opening chapter, you're talking about the first witch that was burned.
So, well, the point, you're right. I mean, a lot of people have sort of written a lot about it. And what I was sort of keen to do is try and address those people who are really confused by it all, which I think is most people. You know,
people.
You and I are sort of constantly in the middle of all of this sort of stuff, but it's not typical for most people. And they can see that something is changing in society, and they can see that it's affecting everyone. And they can see that there's this movement that seems to have infected all of the major institutions, artistic, educational, academia, even the police, even the health service, just everything, that calls itself progressive and calls itself liberal, but weirdly seems to have very illiberal effects, weirdly seems to make the society more divided, more racist, all of the opposite of what it's claiming to do. So everyone's baffled. No one knows what the hell's going on. So I thought I'd try and write a book that explains sort of punches through all the linguistic minefields and sort of says, look, this is where it's come from. This is what it's developed into. A lot of it's come about from well-intentioned people who want to make the world a better place, but they're actually just fucking it up. And it's so complicated that I think I needed a book to go through absolutely everything and explain it. And also I wanted to draw these parallels with Salem because I think it helps make sense of it. because I look back at what happened in Salem in New England in the late 1600s, and it was a really good community of decent people, God-fearing. They didn't go around hunting witches. They didn't go around burning women. This was not something they did. It's just in this 1 year, just a little over 12 months, they all went a bit mad, and they started believing these little girls who said they could see demons and witches everywhere. And I see those little girls as a bit like the activists of today who think they can see Nazis everywhere, and Turks, and fascists and racists and homophobes and transphobes. And they see them everywhere. They see them in the shadows, and they point and they scream. And all of the people in authority say, okay, well, we'll change all our policies. We'll change the world around your visions. We'll just do that. And that's exactly what happened in Salem. If those little girls had been pointing witch and saying all of these people are in league with the devil, and the magistrates and the ministers had just said, no, that's not true. No. I think you've just had you're a bit tired, maybe. Then it would have gone away. No one would have been hanged. It would have gone away overnight. But the problem wasn't the girls. The problem was the magistrates, the ministers, the people in authority who went along with it, mostly because they were terrified. Because if anyone said they might be wrong, they were the next to be hanged. They were the next to be accused, which I think is very analogous to cancel culture today. So I think people in authority going along with it. And the other parallel that I thought was really important was that all of the prosecutions in Salem were secured on what they called spectral evidence. And all that meant was that the girls saw it, it was their truth, therefore it was real. And we call that lived experience. We have the same thing. Someone says, I think that person's a racist, and the accusation is taken as proof. And so we're now back into that situation. And so I think by drawing comparisons with a story like that everyone has some familiarity with, I was hoping it makes this comprehensible. Suddenly, maybe we can understand what this is. And what it is, I suppose, in one word, is hysteria.
Yes. Why do you think people listened to these little girls?
So what I found really interesting, the more I read of Salem, was that it was quite clear that a number of those in charge didn't really believe it. There are loads of examples of, if you look at the history. For instance, there was one girl who during a court case pulled out a fragment of a knife which had been dug into her. And she said that the person on the stand had sent this out through their spirit and stabbed her in court. And a man at the court said, hold on a minute, that broke off my knife the other day and you were there and you saw it and you must have hidden it. And instead of the magistrate saying, oh, that means she's just lied in court, they said, let's just move on. He said, let's and that didn't happen. Let's just move on. The other thing that was interesting is whenever the girls accused someone who was powerful, too powerful, like there was a guy called Willard, who was the acting president of Harvard, big cheese. And they accused him, and the magistrate said, no, you must have made a mistake. You mean Constable Willard, who you've already accused, who's already in prison. And so they would effectively say, yeah, we can't do that. So, well, there was a brilliant one when the girls went to Andover, they started spreading out, they got popular, they went on tour. And they went from Salem to Andover. And in Andover, they accused a really powerful local dignitary. And he said, okay, if you're going to accuse me of being in league with the devil, I'm going to sue you. And he issued a writ for defamation. And they straight away backed off. So unless the devil is terrified of being sued, it wasn't real. And people knew it wasn't real. So the people were generally going along with it out of terror, I think, because there were such good people. There was a woman called Rebecca Nurse who was considered the most respected, upstanding Christian woman in the village of Salem. And she was the one who said, this is just a silly season. This isn't real. Mm-hmm. And they accused her and she was hanged. So if that can happen to someone like her, then it could happen to anyone. And I think what we're living through today is no one's getting hanged, but cancel culture does mean you can have your life destroyed, your career ruined, your friendships destroyed, your reputation obliterated. The stakes are not trivial. And I think people just want an easy life. So they'll say, okay, all these activists are screaming that we are institutionally transphobic and racist. So let's get Robin DiAngelo in. Let's get a drag queen in to talk to us about gender identity. And then we've ticked that box and we're safe and we can get on with life. And I think you and I have discussed this before, but a lot of it's to do with fear. These are scary people. They're really frightening, right? The way they go on online, the way they dogpile and lie about people is insane,
This podcast has been one that has had many of the canceled on, it's a little bit of the island of misfit toys. And there was a New York Times article where it's like all the people who are canceled, they're all hanging out. And I don't know if we're all hanging out, but I've definitely had many of them on the podcast, and they're always some of the most disturbing interviews that I do. Like, I recently had Ariel Pink on, and he's a crazy musician. He's very eccentric. And he was talking about voting for Trump, and he lives in Echo Park. He was like this darling of independent music. And then he went to the January 6th. He just went to go see the protest, but somebody wrote that he went to the insurrection, and life destroyed. I mean, musicians will try and bring him as guests to perform, and they'll be told that they can't bring him. It's craziness. And interviewing him, I remember I was lying in bed that night, just haunted by some of the things he said and the way that he was so in shock. He just couldn't believe it. He's like, you can be crazy as a musician. This is the one profession where you can be absolutely mad. And I never thought that I would have my career destroyed for being a bit of a contrarian, or for being saying that I was going to vote for Trump, or it's madness. It truly is madness. And like you said, hysteria, but it isn't hanging, but I don't know. I've interviewed people, and they said, I wish that they would have just sentenced me to death, because this is even worse. I can't, there's no end, or been sentenced to jail. There's no end to this sentence. There's no redemption. There's no, if you cut off somebody's ability to make a living, you're sentencing them to death. It's just a slow death. If they can't go feed themselves and their family, it's still a somewhat of a death sentence. It's just a different kind.
I actually met him in London. So like that, you say the cancel people all hanging out. It's sort of true in a way.
It is true.
Meeting these people. Yeah. But you're right. But there's a number of things there. Like, one of the things is that it isn't about a death sentence, or about, a lot of it's to do with reputation, because the sense of injustice when people are openly lying about you is absolutely horrible. And it's something that everyone understands, I think, because it's one of the earliest emotions we have. Children are particularly sensitive to injustice. And to have thousands of strangers online lying about you, saying things that are simply not true. And the other thing is, so many of these people who've been cancelled have to deal with the fact that they've also got an army of commentators telling them that cancel culture doesn't actually exist.
I know.
So they're going through this thing, and they're being gaslit, to use their phrase, into pretending that, and if you take someone like Gillian Phillip, I don't know if you've heard of her. She was a children's author in the UK who had simply tweeted in support of J.K. Rowling. Now, obviously, you can't cancel J.K. Rowling. She's massive. But you can cancel a lesser-known children's author. And they did. She lost her publisher, her agent. She had to retrain as a truck driver. And now she's doing that for a living. She says that that's much better. But, the one thing I've also found in common with all of these people is how nice they are. Like, I've yet to meet one where I think, God, well, I can tell you're a bit of an unpleasant type of person, so I get why people would want to go for you. It's just not the case. Like, these are really decent people who've been attacked. Not that would make it okay, because, as you say, particularly in the artistic world, creative world, people should be able to be a bit nuts. Some of the best artists we've ever had are probably not very nice people. They're unhinged. They're socially awkward. But they're also ripe for cancellation, because you can repaint eccentricity as morally repugnant, if you like. If that's very easy to do, because people look at someone and say, "Oh, that person's a bit weird." So I bet he is a secret fascist, sort of thing. But yeah, you're right. It's unfathomable when it happens to you. I don't think anyone thinks it will, but it is maddening and it amplified by social media. All these. It's all strangers. That's the other thing about it. And you can't control it. You can't just stand up and say, look, listen to what I'm saying, and let's draw this back to sanity, because the insanity is sort of taken over by that point. And so it's really horrible. And that, again, I suppose, is why I wanted to write the book, because I've given lots of examples in the book of cancel culture, loads and loads of examples of where this ideology has taken hold, so that if people try to pretend it's not real, there are just too many references. I've sourced it all in the footnotes. You can't read the book and then go away and say it's not real unless you are prepared to lie, which, of course, a lot of the proponents of cancel culture do lie.
Well, even in Ariel Pink's example, you also have these headlines that are lies. Just a blatant lie. Ariel Pink was at the insurrection or whatever. You can't make that go away. Even if no one's retracting that, it's unless you have money to sue, like you said, it's a drawn. How are you going to fight that? And Google never forgets. You'd have to hire someone to try and scrub it, to bury you have to change your name. You'd have to try and bury the results. And then people will accuse you of, changing your identity to try and run. It is, I mean, I've heard truly some of my friends who have been through this. It is very traumatic. In the early years following, they don't seem to really spooked off by everything. And the other thing that it does to you is it makes you really paranoid.
Yeah.
So you don't know if somebody's not returning your email because they Googled you or if they're just busy. And now you're always wondering.
Oh, so I was speaking to Graham Linehan about this, he's a comedy writer in the UK who was completely cancelled. Very famous because he wrote a sitcom, which I don't think is known in America, but it's called Father Ted. Very, very big sitcom, Irish sitcom. And he's considered one of the best comedy writers of all time. But he was being completely cancelled because of his gender critical stance. It's the usual thing. But I was talking to him about this, and he said he often doesn't even phone old friends now. And I don't, I have to say, because my assumption is if I do, they won't answer. My assumption is they might say something nasty and I can't be dealing with it. And
right.
Because there's too many lies out there now that they will have heard. And so you end up sort of resigning yourself to, I'll just be friends with the ones I've got then. And which is great because actually I've met loads of really nice people through this whole mad culture or nonsense who are arguably better friends than the ones I've lost. I think. I don't know where you stand on that. I mean, do you feel you've lost friends as a result of all this stuff?
I think in the comedy world, I definitely lost friends and peers, and that was the hardest thing. And I've been thinking a lot about how it made me very skittish about even getting on stage and going out, because when I started being more open and then I had people unfollow me, and it made me, I just wasn't secure enough I was already someone who felt insecure around my peers in general. Just, I always was more afraid of my comedy peers than the judgment of them than the audience, just from a comic perspective.
Yeah.
But then when it came down to them judging me for aligned with white supremacists or fascists, and this one big comedian and writer came after me. And it was one time when I was kind of dogpiled by all of Black Twitter. In this instance, I've been dogpiled by every Twitter, Antifa, MAGA, like the Groiper, everyone, right and left. I've been dogpiled. But in this instance, and it feels so much bigger than it is. That if you sit with it, it's going to feel enormous. And luckily, I had people who had been before me, and they just said, and I took my own advice, which is log out and just move away. It's like the flu. It'll pass in 72 hours. They're going to need to find someone else. And if you don't give it any energy, they'll move on.
Yeah.
And generally that's the case. And I'm not someone, I'll always wonder why I lost my job at Playboy, because that was something that just disappeared, and it wasn't like for any reason. And they can easily, and I always say this in our industry, it's not like you're going to necessarily get fired if you don't have a job, but you're never really going to know what doors aren't open to you anymore or won't open. Or if you get put up for writing on a comedy show and someone in the room is like, oh, I fucking hate that girl. Have you ever seen her Twitter? She's a Nazi, And then they won't even bother. Why would you bother when you can go hire someone who might not be as funny, but you know they're not going to cause any trouble or I don't want her in the room because she makes me feel unsafe. This is the other weapon that everybody uses as this cudgel. So
if I was having a business meeting, you know, and I'd invited someone and someone else said, oh, actually, you know, they hang out with white supremacists all the time. I'd be like, fuck, I'm not having that person. I mean, you know,
yeah.
you would, but that's the thing. The extent of the lies are so horrible and so far removed from the truth. So I sort of get it why people do that.
Yeah, and I'm not any victim either. I feel I mean, I've talked about this before. How when we were meeting this crossroads, I had managers with Maggie, my cousin, who's also the producer on this and everything I do, and we write scripts together. And we came to LA to write on television, and we finally got managers, and we were working so hard to do that. And then I was at Playboy at the same time, and I started noticing how much low-hanging fruit there was on the left. I'm like, we're comedians.
Yeah.
Your parody satirical how do you say her name? Titania McGrath. Titania, yeah. I always mispronounce it. Titania McGrath it's just brilliant. How can you not make fun of these ridiculous people?
Yeah. I thought it was a no-brainer, but apparently there were some meetings without me where the comedy community decided, no, we must not attack on what this incredibly powerful movement. We must
incredibly ridiculous movement.
Right. And you know who's in charge when you're not allowed to mock them. You know, that's what they say, isn't it? And this is really it. It's like, but when did that meeting happen? Why wasn't I invited to that? No one told me.
No one ever told me either. So that was a moment where I had to sit down with Maggie and say, and I saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, and I saw the way one of my managers, I just could tell she didn't like me. She was very, I could see the writing on the wall. And I said, you know, Maggie, I can shut up and put my head down, and we can write comedy, and it will, and we'll be fine. You know, I can say all the things that will get me, I can write these jokes that will get me on late night and not really believe any of it, but I know how to write in this tone, because all you have to do is essentially write satire and you sound like them. Yeah. So I could just become a permanently satirical writer and they would take me seriously. Or I can say the truth and make fun of this stuff and just let the chips fall where they may. And she's like, you're going to go, I know you, Bridget, you're going to go crazy. You can't shut up. And she's right. Exactly.
And I think anyone who's a sort of vocational comic who's in it for that reason, because they have to be, they won't shut up and they'll do whatever they want. Although I have noticed in America, there is more freedom, I think, insofar as there are lots of comics now being very successful and who are mocking this stuff. Whereas in the UK, that still at the moment, that is a dead end in terms of if you ever want to get on the BBC or on TV, that you know that's not going to happen if you mock those things. Maybe there's just more avenues in America, you know.
I don't think those people there's only one person who I can think that kind of seamlessly pivots back and forth between what you would call mainstream and doing comedy about this stuff, and it's Bill Burr. And I would say, that's because he was already huge. So he was already working. He was already doing like movies and stuff like that. He had his show F is for Family. So he already had a lot of stuff in the mainstream already when this started happening. And then they've tried to cancel Bill a lot of times. And you'll see these people being like, this racist motherfucker. And they don't know that his wife is black. So I think weirdly, and I hate to even say that, but I think that offers him a certain amount of, when people come for him in that way online, other people who know Bill are like, you sound like a fucking idiot right now calling this guy racist. He's married to a black woman and they have 2 kids. So, and then they'll be like, well, that doesn't mean you can't be racist. They're like, you sound like a crazy person. You're a crazy person.
It does. I mean, because the level of commitment it would take as a racist to marry a black person and have children by them, that, you know, you would deserve everything you got for that. That's impressive. If you could do that, if you could power through your hate.
I think the people who try to signal that way by coming for him end up looking very stupid. And And then, so I think he kind of seamlessly flows back and forth. But I think the people who have made it still being true to themselves are still, I would consider them pretty independent. You know, they like the Andrew, they're kind of unicorns too. Like the Andrew Schultzes, the Tim Dillons, these guys who have amassed huge fortunes and audiences. They aren't necessarily appearing on The Mandalorian.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did an event with Andrew Schultz last week, and he was sort of saying this, that he jokes about whatever the hell he wants, and he does. And I was sort of trying to explain that maybe it is just different in the UK, but this particularly affects comics who are up and coming,
right?
Comics who are new to the circuit, and they see what happens to people who, you know, because they make examples of certain people, and then they just don't bother anymore. And a lot of the most promising comics that I knew, I used to run like this stand-up course about 7 years ago, and some of the most promising, really, really talented comics from that cohort, who were in their early 20s at the time, they've now, most of them are doing sort of the expected sermons disguised as comedy now. And they've pivoted into that. And you see, you know, they're still talented and they're still brilliant and all the rest of it, but you see some things, there's a glimmer that's missing. It's an anesthetized version of what they could have been. And it's really a disaster for the arts, but it's particularly a disaster for comedy, I think. I wonder what brilliant acts we don't have because of this movement. You know, they've sort of throttled them at birth, I think.
God, I was reading Douglas Murray's new one, the War on the West, and it's basically just like yours, just example after example, just things I had completely either blocked out or forgotten about. But the ones where it was like the museum curator who got just ridiculous. The smallest little thing, and I've been saying this for years when people say, oh, cancel culture doesn't exist because look at Dave Chappelle and look at Kevin Hart and look at Joe Rogan. These guys already had the escape velocity to be beyond it. They were already big enough, and they're like, we're 100 millionaires, fuck off. You know?
Yeah, and it's also not just, it's people who ought to be protected, like scientists. You know, they're going after scientists now. I mean, the one that I mentioned in the book that I still can't quite get over is the New Zealand government, which has been completely captured by this movement, decided that in science lessons at school, they should teach, alongside like evolution and all of that, they should also teach indigenous ways of knowing. So as you're being taught about the theory of evolution and Darwin, you're also being taught that raindrops are the tears of a forest goddess. And this guy, you know,
it's like creationism.
Right, exactly. And these academics wrote a letter. It was really respectful. It was saying, look, we respect indigenous people's rights to believe whatever they want. We have respect for tradition, but it just shouldn't be in a science classroom. Fired, out.
It should be in a mythology classroom.
Right. And they got demonized, attacked. He lost his job, etc. So nothing protects you, not even Darwin, not even the theory of it, not even the truth, not even science can protect you from this. It is far-reaching and out of control. And every time we talk about it, I know we've spoken before about, is it on the way out? And you always think, oh, it's going. Something so stupid happens. And nope, gets worse. Yeah. Every time it gets worse, you know?
I keep thinking too, I'm like, maybe I always think of Abigail Schreier. I think of what she said something one night at a dinner that just has haunted me ever since. And she said, if you're waiting for the tide to turn, you're waiting to lose. I mean, her whole thing is you have to be actively fighting against this. If you're just sitting back hoping the tide will turn on this, you're basically waiting to lose. And I think about that all the time because I'm like, maybe the tide is turning. Maybe things are coming. Maybe they're going back to normal. And now what you're seeing, which we've talked about too, and I've had many conversations about, is this backlash on the right, which is, of course, insane too.
Yeah.
So now you're starting to see I'm seeing these forces coalesce on the right, the beginnings of it over where it's equally a purity test, and you have to, you know, this return to like trad wife and return to these ridiculous ideas of masculinity that the guys who are are kind of pushing them don't even abide by.
Well, no.
Good.
I think we've all been predicting this for a long time. It was inevitable that the right would react in this way. And we've had like mainstream people talking about how maybe we got it wrong on gay marriage, because look what it's led to.
Yeah, we just had this conversation. I had Brad Palumbo on yesterday. He's a young gay writer in the United States. He's kind of a commentator, and I've seen him online kind of fighting these battles against, he considers himself center right. And this is becoming more and more mainstream. And I remember a couple of years ago having this conversation with a lot of my lesbian friends. We were unsettled by what we were seeing. And you see it always where I always see it is in the comments first. So you'll see these rumblings in the comments of, I always like to read the comments of other people who are fighting on Twitter or other things that are flashpoints, because I find that I'll see whatever the base or whatever, and it could be just astroturfing, but even if it's astroturfing, even if it's Russia with their troll farms, knowing how to stir things up, if that's what they're using to stir things up, they're still pointing to something that is there. Yeah. And I started seeing these rumblings of like very homophobic language and messaging, and the idea that gay marriage was in fact a slippery slope. We were right.
It's also wrong. I mean, what's really bad about this is the gender ideology movement is one of the worst things for gay people of all that's come about. As someone said to me recently, I can't remember who, but it is the most dangerous time to be a gay kid at the moment by far. Because when I was a kid, you had to be closeted. Everyone hated, being gay was an open joke. But at least there weren't people trying to medicalize us and sterilize us, Right. And that's what's happening now. So it is much, much more dangerous. I've met a few detransitioners now, and I've, people who no longer have genitals, who have been mutilated because they had one or two appointments and were fast tracked onto drugs. I mean, so the idea that this is a slippery slope from gay rights to this is backwards. Actually, it's 100% backwards, and so it's not. Yeah, but you're right. That reaction and the purity thing. You're right. I'm seeing more and more people on the right. Any one point of disagreement, well, you're out. Then you're a pariah. You're no good, and and they see these very visible things like the drag queen story out, and like some of those clips are outrageous. Some of those clips are no adult should be twerking half naked in front of a child. It should be anywhere, anywhere at all. So that's clearly that's wrong. But to take that and say, right, so anyone involved in drag or anyone involved in cabaret or anyone involved in gender bending performance is a groomer or a pedophile or whatever, that's also very, very wrong. And that's not helpful either. So it's like people just jump to the extremes all the time on everything.
Yeah. I know. And then I worry about the race stuff. You saw that. I don't know if you caught that like whole Scott Adams debate that was going on where he came out. Oh, it was, he lost all of his, he went on some rant and he was saying that, I think the clip that was going around, and I didn't see the whole clip in context, and it doesn't matter because the clip itself is what went around, and that everybody was talking about either defending or saying, see, this is why you're racist.
Is this the Dilbert thing?
The Dilbert thing.
Yeah. I did read about
So he basically said something like white people should get away from black people.
Right. But there you go. Like that's an unpleasant thing to say. So you get the frustration because I think there was some stupid survey about it's okay to be white, and like 50% of people of black respondents saying it's not okay to be white, and that's fucking stupid and offensive and awful. But the response to that isn't okay. Therefore, black people are the problem. You've got to steer clear of black people because that's just racist, right? So, exactly. You're right. I think we can expect more of that. And
it doesn't get filtered well. You see, even if you're, and this is something I used to talk to Gavin McKinnon about when, like, I went on his show before he was canceled. I think it was that night actually that he was canceled forever because he went to New York and started wielding a sword or whatever. And I went on to talk about being a heroin addict. And I was like, I'll talk to anyone about this because I think it's important that this message of recovery gets out anywhere because particularly on the right wing, I don't feel like they have as much access to that kind of, it's all just like culture war shit always on the right wing, reacting. So we were talking and afterwards, and I think what I've noticed about him is some of the stuff that he says in context getting filtered down through clips, and it's like it's gonna end up with just people hearing the most simple version of that, and it's always gonna be racist. You know, that they're not understanding your intellectual justifications for why the history of whatever you're trying to explain or justify, it ends up just being filtered down into this very simple, someone who doesn't hear all of Scott Adams. That was the thing that I noticed too, just being bounced into, you know, right-wing media. I always joke about this. I'd be like, you know, we should, I'm all for free speech. And then it would be someone in the comments would be like, yeah, and F black people or something. I'm like, whoa. You know?
Yeah, God.
Like, whoa. That's not, or like, yeah, and women should shut the fuck up, you know, and you should, it's like, there's a lot of problematic people on the right as well. It's not just the left that I'm looking at and saying, hey guys, clean up your side of the street. I was really like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of racism and misogynists in this part of the movement that we can't ignore either.
Right. Is the solution? I mean, I don't know what the solution is. I mean, what I get to at the end of the New Puritans is I'd say, I think we need to reserve our energies for the people who are still persuadable and for the people who are still able to engage in serious discussion and capable of reason and rational thought, and just let the armies of screaming, either woke avatar types or, you know, far right racist types, let them scream away and just work around them. And you know, I think that's the only way we can survive this, because I do still stick to, most people are decent. Like most people you meet are decent, and they're not racist, and they're not hateful, and they're, you know, and there's a lot of them out there. But also most people are just quiet when it comes to this stuff. And most people
does this kind of regressive ideology, is it making people more racist? This is what I'm wondering, because my perception is that everyone's becoming more racist.
Well, I think it's definitely. Yes, I think that's true. I think it's definitely making us all notice race a whole lot more than we ever used to, in a really unhealthy way. So like one of the examples I give in the book is that, you know, when I was a kid, we had a show in the UK called Red Dwarf, which is a comedy show. It was my favorite show. It was all my friends' favorite show. And none of us noticed or cared that the two lead characters in that were black. It just didn't even register. It wouldn't even be, it's not that we didn't see it, but we wouldn't have commented on that. Like, why would that matter? But now you would. Now you would be like, oh, okay, so that those people have been hired to increase the diversity of the show, and if they were being interviewed now, the interview would ask them about their race and why that's important for positive representation. So you get this kind of hyper racialized society, and you know, ethnic minority people have said the same thing, that they've never felt more black and they've never felt more conscious of their skin color, and all of this is just a huge backward step, because ultimately I've always argued that I think the goal is what Martin Luther King expressed so beautifully in his speech. The goal is colorblindness, which doesn't mean we don't notice race. It means we don't treat people differently because of race. But then you've got people like Robin DiAngelo saying that anyone who advances colorblindness is a white supremacist. She said that idea is a form of white supremacy. That's what she says in White Fragility, which would mean that Martin Luther King, according to this middle-aged white woman, is a racist. So I would say it has rather than made us more racist, I think it's hyper-racialized society needlessly.
That's good. That's a good way of saying it.
I think so, because whereas the liberal project and the liberal approach, and I know liberal means something very different in America, you tend to see it as left-wing, and that's not what it means here. The liberal project, according to classical liberalism, is is you prioritize individual freedom, and that everyone gets to live their life as they want, so long as they don't impede on the rights of others. And that means that if you see an example of racial discrimination or racism, you stand up against it. and you tackle it and you deal with it. And that was working because things were getting better. They weren't perfect. But the problem is that the critical race theorists, they explicitly said, we are an anti-liberal movement because liberalism doesn't work, because racism still exists. But because the Liberal Project was never saying we've reached this utopian endpoint where it doesn't exist anymore. It was like, this is an ongoing thing. It's not going to happen overnight. And it was working. If you compare the way that race relations were working in the 1960s to how they were in the 2010s before all this kicked off, it was definitely going in the right direction. Huge progress had been made. And then I feel like the woke swooped in and just fucked it. And they just pulled away all the support that has been created, and all the positive steps were being retraced all of a sudden. And now we are in this hyper-racialized society again, where I think the authentic racists are starting to feel more emboldened because there is this backlash. And you know, I think inevitably, if you push identity politics, if you say that group identity based on race, gender, and sexuality is the way in which you have to see everything, that's the prism through which you have to assess everything in society, then yeah, that's going to apply also to the white nationalists.
Yeah. You know? That's what I remember talking to my friends, some of my comedian friends about this, and they were unsettled by this back even in 2015, 2016. And we were like, do we want white guys thinking about their whiteness? You know, do we want, like, I feel like we kind of got away from that. Do we want
really bad idea?
Really, certain populations of white people to be hyper focusing on this again?
Yeah. It's such a bad idea.
It's not good. It's
and making them feel bad about it.
And like they're you know, just... Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it even in AA meetings, which is the last place you should see it. And I remember one meeting, this woman who she was like a short she had blonde hair, was sitting on some balcony in Mexico, probably because she escaped to go to the pandemic down there, and was lecturing everybody about their privilege and saying, you know, we need to do better. We need to do better. We need to pay more attention to diversifying the rooms. Did you know that in America, 7 out of 10 people in every AA meeting is white? And I'm like, what you're saying is we need more addicts of color. Do you even fucking hear yourself? No, you don't. You're just saying something that you think makes sense, and it's fucking ridiculous and absurd on its face. By the way, 70% of Americans are white, so that is the correct percentage. That's also just statistics.
What does she think, that you should go out and sort of try and get people addicted to drugs and try and
That's what I mean. We need more addicts of color. That's what you're saying. Just I wanted to stop her and be like, just to be clear. And can you imagine lecturing someone who's like a meth head who just came in and is on day 2 about their privilege?
Yeah.
Like in any context, and what that does, it only makes people feel more aggrieved. It makes them focus on their identity, and it creates a resentment. I'm like, you are resentment creating machines. That is all this is. It creates so much resentment everywhere. And then they tell you that while they're saying these things that are absurd on their face, and some of it is like, you know, my friend and I had a guest on, and she asked me a good question, like, what woke stuff do you agree with? And when I think of all of kind of the tenets of it, there's a lot that I agree with. I think it's important. I think diversity is important. I think representation, like seeing average women in magazines, I think those things are good, you know, but then it's always taken to this like further extreme where now you're making sure that on every board there's a certain quota, or it's like it becomes box checking. But I think opening things up and making them, it's almost to the point where you will not see a white couple in any commercial, and it's hilarious.
It's really funny.
It's hilarious.
But I think that's a good point you raise, insofar as there are some premises of woke culture that do make sense. So one of the key questions that critical race theory asks is, why is it we live in a society where there is legal protections against racism, and yet racism still exists? And that's a good question. And that's actually worth addressing and worth answering. But then the excesses of that, the answer to that, which is what the critical race theorists posit, which is that all human interaction is underpinned by white supremacy, that the key organizing system of society is white supremacy. It's promoting the interests of white people. That's what underpins everything. And that also, because of what they call interest convergence, if any black person does succeed within this society, it's only because it's been in the interests of white people, such as Barack Obama, for instance. They would say, well, that's just an example of interest convergence, not an example of a black person being successful. So you can't win because black people who aren't successful, that's taken as evidence of their claims. But black people who are successful are taken as evidence of their claims. But this is not the way to solve. And that's why I go back to the liberal project. If you say the way to solve racism is to detect these invisible power structures that only people like Kimberly Crenshaw and Derek Bell are qualified to detect, and then you implement a notion of equity so that we have equality of outcome, irrespective of ability, talent, or anything else that might go on. And if you re-engineer society to force this to happen, you're not going to get rid of racism. You're going to make us more racist. You're going to hyper-racialize us. Whereas if you go with the liberal project, is we don't imagine racism where it isn't and tackle that. We tackle actual instances of racism, and we do so robustly. Then progress is made, and the proof of that is the history of the last 6 decades. It works. Why anyone would want to scupper that project and replace it with something that clearly doesn't work? Can anyone honestly say, since this all kicked off in the sort of mid-2010s, that things have got better? Can anyone honestly say that? Because I just don't believe that they can. Not even the activists, if they were being honest.
Yeah, I wonder if we just have to cycle through it. You know, I'm not, but at what cost, I don't know.
We can't with the gender stuff, because that's the danger of that is so pernicious.
Yes.
It's not something you can just hope goes away because you're dealing with kids being mutilated.
I'll fight. That's like a hill I've accepted that I'll probably die on. You know, I'm okay with that. I'll protect the kids against that. And it's like I was saying on my podcast yesterday, this is the conversation I hear among moms, because now I'm in the mom world, and I've had women in LA who are like, tell me where to send my kids. Do you know which school doesn't have this? Because they're desperate trying to, it's in every private school. I'm like, Catholic school is the only place you can send your kid.
And I think and there are so many examples of why this is important, because, in the UK, we've had a recent development which looks quite positive. I don't know how much you guys have heard about it, but
the Tavistock? No,
not the Tavistock, although the Tavistock is an example because that's now being closed down. It's still running at the moment. But even though whistleblowers at the Tavistock were saying for years, this is all homophobia. That's what's going on here. Like they were saying, they had a joke at the Tavistock, a dark joke amongst staff. They used to say that there will be no gay people left.
This is pray the gay away, only medical. Right. It's medicalized. Therapy. Yeah.
But no, we've recently had a case where the Scottish National Party, the ruling party in Scotland, they tried to make it easier to self-identify as female. And they said, you don't need a medical diagnosis. You just need to live for 3 months as the opposite sex. And then you can call yourself a woman and get access to women-only spaces, including hospital wards, prisons, domestic violence refuge centers, all of that kind of stuff, as though predators don't exploit any possible loophole.
I know.
And then coincidentally, when all of this debate was raging, this double rapist called Adam Graham, who decided once he'd been convicted of rape that he was actually a woman called Isla Bryson, and was being remanded in a female prison while they were working out what to do with him. But because this coincided with this political event, and because there were photographs of Adam Graham with this neck tattoo, scary looking rapist who was going to be housed in a female prison with full intact male genitalia, suddenly that image, it changed things. And partly as a result of that, the head of the SNP has had to step down.
I did hear about this.
So it's it's mostly about, because it's difficult to explain, because if you said to people, well, look, there's loads of men with male genitalia, rapists in women's prisons, people will be like, you're making that up. That cannot be the case. But it is the case. But once they saw the photo, and once they heard from the head of the SNP's own lips that, yeah, okay, we're remanding this person in a female prison, then people were outraged and things changed. And I think, so the more these things become visible, we had another example where the NHS, which is our National Health Service, they accommodate people by same sex. So you should, as a woman, be accommodated on a ward as a patient with other women, but they actually accommodate people by gender identity. They just don't tell the public. And they've got a policy called Annex B, which means that if you're a woman on a ward and you see there's a man there with male genitalia on your ward and you complain, the staff members are obliged to say to you, according to NHS policy, you are mistaken, there is no man here. They are actually meant to gaslight you as part of the policy. And last year, there was a rape on a ward in London. The police turned up at the hospital and they said, oh, there's been a sexual assault on this ward by a male patient. And the staff actually said to the police, that's incorrect. There are no men on this ward, because that was the policy.
What the fuck?
So it's not just making excuses for rape, but disrupting a police investigation. So when these things are happening, you can't just say, let's hope it goes away.
No.
You're dealing with rape victims and you're dealing with the female prisoner population are very vulnerable. There's a huge proportion of those women have blunt head trauma. They have been beaten and largely at the hands of men. They've suffered male violence. It's not like the men's prisons, which are terrifying places of people being killed and stabbed. And most women in prisons are there for, embezzlement or something not to do with violent crime. It's just not the same thing. You throw a serial male rapist into the mix there, and that's like a form of torture. That, like, even if they haven't attacked, the constant fear, the psychological fear that you're putting people under, it's inexcusable.
No, this is another thing that I rage against.
Yeah.
Because it happens in California prisons. And I had the Women's Liberation Front on here. They're suing the state of California over this, because it's like, why would you think that predators and criminals wouldn't lie to have all the access they want to women who have no voice? They're locked away with these people. And not only does it put the women in the prisoners in danger, but the female guards are terrified. So it's not even just the women who are imprisoned. It's also the female guards who work at those prisons are saying that they can't manage this. They're terrified.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's provable that male predators lie to get to their victims. Because history's full of it. The fact that we even have to say that, I know. It's ridiculous.
I mean, recently, right before this, when I was on Megyn Kelly, we were talking about a story that broke this week in Minnesota. A weightlifter sued the state of Minnesota because he said that sex segregation was discriminatory to trans women. And so this biological male has sued to be able to compete against women in weightlifting.
That's madness. I mean, it's madness. Well, that's another example, though, isn't it? When you get like the Leah Thomas thing, the swimmer who went from ranked 522nd or something to number 1 overnight because he suddenly identified as female. And you see that person, that bloke, towering on the winner's podium over those women. Then things change, don't they? People start seeing this is a real problem. I can see it now.
And they'll be called transphobic.
But then they'll also be called transphobic. And yeah, exactly. But the thing is, the stats are on our side.
Nuts. It doesn't matter, though. Yeah, I'm worried that this video will get flagged because now you have tech behind this, too. So we're having this conversation and I'm sitting here thinking, it's probably going to get flagged just for me even having this conversation, which is also insane. You cannot call out reality. You can't. That is the thing that's the most unsettling about this whole entire time that we're living through, is that you will be punished for saying the emperor has no clothes.
Yes, exactly. Well, I hope it doesn't get flagged.
No, because no one really pays attention to me, so that's the good news.
One of the advantages. Yeah, it is madness. And I often think about what future historians will make of this period. I don't think they will be able to understand where the hell
there will be no future historians, Andrew.
No, they must be wiped away. Exactly. Well, that's the other thing is so much of this movement is about either revising history, but also just flat out lying about what's going on, and any facts or data that get in the way are to just be casually disregarded. These activists say that self-ID is a flawless system. No one ever identifies as the opposite sex unless they are the opposite sex, unless they have that gender identity. And that's, we can disprove it because, for one thing, trans prisoners in prison are hugely disproportionately more likely to be sex offenders than women or men. Hugely, by a massive gap, right? So what are you saying to me? Are you saying, therefore, that trans people are just inherently more likely to be predatory? Or are you saying that it's either that or a lot of men are lying and pretending to be women?
Right.
It has to be one or the other.
Right.
And so if they don't accept that self-ID is a flawed system, they're effectively saying trans people are more likely to be predators, and that's transphobic. So they should be cancelled. You know? It's so
bad. I thought it was going to get better, and then I run into really smart liberal people who will say to me, I'll say, this has been institutionalized, like this stuff, and they'll be like, where has it been institutionalized? Like, I can't even argue with you if that's your big clapback. Show me where it's been institutionalized. They are letting men self-ID into female prisons. Let's start there. We could just start there, but there's many other places where they gave the White House gave a like for International Women's Day, they gave this trans woman an award yesterday for International Women's Day.
Yeah, exactly. So women are excluded from winning International Women's Day. I mean, it's nonstop. And that's the other reason why I put all these references in my book, because I want people to see the evidence is all in. It's all in. We've got it, right? This is everywhere. It is in academia, embedded deeply. It is in the police.
Why doesn't it go the other way, by the way? This is the other thing. You never hear about it going the other way. You're never hearing about a woman accepting an award on behalf of a man.
Well, that's a very good question. And a lot of feminists do see an acute strain of misogyny in a lot of this, you know?
I mean, this is my joke that I do. Patriarchy so crafty. I'm like, yeah. They've started losing ground, and this is their way to stay on top.
Have you ever seen the word men spelt MXN? I haven't.
No.
I see women spelt WAMOMXN.
It always goes. That's why when I say women are being erased, people tell me I'm transphobic. But I'm like, why doesn't this go in the other direction?
Where are the prostate havers? Where are the people with testes?
Yeah.
No, they're not there. I mean, there's people with vulvas and bleeders
and uterus havers.
Yeah. And also, if you look at the tenor of the activists, there is a huge streak of violent imagery and rhetoric from trans rights activists. Images of people with guns saying, shut the fuck up, TERF.
Yeah.
Rape threats. A lot of the threats that J.K. Rowling gets are sexualized in nature. That's the sort of thing misogynists do. Yeah. That's the sort of thing men do, right? So all these trans people saying that they are authentically women while they're sending rape threats and saying, choke on my girl dick. I mean, it's not exactly ladylike, is it?
God, it makes me so mad.
These are aggressive men behaving in a typically masculine way.
I mean, there's something to be said for being misogyny in a dress. Like it's infuriating to see. And I had Colin Wright on, and he was telling me that he got booted off Etsy, where you can buy a shirt that says shoot TERFs in the face for having his t-shirt that said reality's last stand. Like,
Right. And this is why I also think this has been a disaster for your average trans person, right? Because gender dysphoria is real. There are people who, for whatever reason, psychologically cannot live unless they present as the other sex, and they go through long and painful and expensive procedures. It is not easy. And those people want to pass as the opposite sex, and they want to have peaceful lives. And you get all these activists who a lot of them are just fetishists, are just male fetishists in dresses who don't go through all that surgery and don't do all of that stuff, sending rape threats and death threats and doing it on the behalf of trans people. They say, we are speaking for them. No wonder you get this backlash where people start just saying, well, actually, maybe I am transphobic, because if they send rape and death threats as a matter of course, then I don't like those people. None of the trans people I've known ever behave like that. And so this has been, I think, a disaster for trans people too. And I think that's something that, again, it's worth bearing in mind in all of this, you know?
Yeah. This is why I think people like Buck Angel and Blair White are so important, because they push back against this. And Buck will say, you're not speaking on my behalf. You know, most trans people are like, just leave, like, we just want to live and leave us alone. And it's not like this. There's like a narcissistic personality that seems to be really attracted to that movement, and they end up sullying it for people who, like you said, actually suffer from gender dysphoria. And as Buck has said, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. Gender dysphoria is not something that I would want my child to suffer from, or I would want my friend to suffer from. It is painful, and it doesn't make your life easier. It makes your life much harder.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I think it's really important for people to denounce those kinds of behaviors. You know, like if I was part of a movement and a substantial proportion of the most vocal element of that movement was sending rape threats to people and death threats, I'd be like, these people are not to do with me. Like, I would be very clear. But, you know, people are so hesitant to denounce the threats that J.K. Rowling gets. You know, they think that's deserved. And it's like, you got to take a stand on this. Like, it's not, you know, there's a reason why transphobia, or whatever you want to call it, you know, mistrust of trans is growing, is because of this. I mean, and it can be really bad, because I reckon about 10, 15 years ago, everyone I knew, if a friend of theirs had gone through the transitional process, they'd be cool with using the pronouns of the opposite sex, the name and everything. No one ever had a problem with this. Now, increasingly, I'm meeting people, particularly feminists, who are saying, I can't use pronouns unless it relates directly to biological sex. I can't do it anymore, even for friends, even for people, because there's too much at stake now. Right.
You know, I get that. I know I have a lot of really feminist friends who are like, nope, I'm not referring, because I had no problem referring to, it's like the whole trans women is women mantra, and I think that's what's at stake. So they will refuse to even call them a trans woman. They'll call them him.
Or a trans-identifying male.
Yeah.
So, and this has all happened because the trans umbrella has been so expanded, and you've had groups like Stonewall now saying basically there's no difference between someone with gender dysphoria who goes through all of that, you know, painful procedure. There's no difference between that person and a crossdresser, and there's no difference between that person and some kid
and a woman
who says they're non-binary, or or exactly. So, which means that it doesn't mean anything. So I think, like I say, all of this stuff, and it's similar with the anti-racist movement, like I was saying, hyper-racializing society. All of these movements that call themselves progressive and purport to be making society better, they are all doing exact opposite of what they claim to be doing. And that's why they're worth standing up against, because it's not helpful to anyone, even the people they claim to represent.
In your book, do you explain exactly why you feel it's having the opposite effect? I mean, I understand why it is, but I
do try to explain.
What's your theory on why this is happening?
Well, I mean, the reason is that I think it is a movement that is detached from truth. And I talk about the origins of the movement in the 1960s post-structuralists, but I don't dwell on that too much. I just sort of talk about, you know, how, you know, you had suddenly this group of people who claimed that our understanding of reality is solely constructed through language, and the way that we perceive the world is all about the language we use. But they were just theorizing, you know, they were throwing theories out there, playing around with it within academia, and that's fine. But then around the late 80s, you have this thing called applied postmodernism. Suddenly, they stopped being academics and became activists. And they said, actually, we're so confident about our theories, we're going to apply them to the world, and we're going to change the world according to those theories. And it's all gone wrong since then. So I try to explain why that's happened, and also how if you prioritize the idea of language above all else, it explains why social justice activists are so pro-censorship. It explains why they want to police the language you use, because they think if they can control the phrases that you use and the language you use, they can control your thoughts and they can make society better.
Right.
It's similar to what happens to Winston Smith in 1984. by the end of that book, he is intoning the mantra 2 + 2 = 5, because the party have made him do it, and they use newspeak to narrow the concept of thought. And so that's why you get this movement, which is so antithetical to free speech, because they think speech is the problem. And this is also why they describe things in ways that are inaccurate. So, for instance, there's a riot in Kenosha, there's burning buildings and cars, and the guy reporting on it says it's mostly peaceful,
right?
Even though you see all this going on behind it,
right?
And the idea being that it doesn't actually have to be peaceful. If you describe something as mostly peaceful, then it is mostly peaceful, because language is all that matters, not the reality. And I think this is why when it's so focused on language and jargon and all the rest of it, you're not dealing with material reality. And so material reality just carries on going in its own way and spirals out of control, and everything falls apart. And what you need is a movement that deals with it's also why, by the way, the activists focus on race, gender, sexuality, and not class, not money,
right?
Not poor people.
Right.
Because if you're dealing with poor people, poverty isn't an abstract thing. Poverty means you don't get to buy food for kids.
Right.
Poverty means you can't afford shoes. Poverty means you can't do anything. And that, of course, if we're being honest, is the most obvious example of social injustice, is when you have no money.
Mm-hmm.
That, by the way, what I just said in White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, she says that's an example of a white supremacist statement. So there we go. But that's what I
Why?
She says that she has a list on one of the pages, a list of white supremacist ideas and how they appear in inadvertent ways. And one of these is talking about colorblindness. That's a good way, but also talking about class and saying class is the most obvious example of oppression. She lists that as being part of the problem. Because, of course, the white privilege is such an important notion to these theorists.
You have to ignore poor white people. You
have to, because they say, as Monroe Bergdorf said, as Oprah Winfrey intimated, you can be homeless and have white privilege. Because class doesn't matter to them, money doesn't matter to them, which is also why I really struggle to see them as a left-wing movement, because the left has always been about money and has been about redressing economic inequality, and they don't care. In fact, they see working class people as the problem. They see working class people as these kind of evil, racist deplorables, dare I say, So it's a really weird, fucked up movement that calls itself left-wing but isn't really left-wing, calls itself liberal but isn't really liberal, calls itself progressive but is actually regressive, uses language in all the wrong ways and gets you to use language in the wrong ways because it thinks that language is all that matters. And I think we need to get back to brass tacks of reality, and that includes scientific reality. So when you've got the New England Journal of Medicine saying that sex is a spectrum, the top experts in biology in the world now think sex is a spectrum. It isn't. So that's going to mess us up as well, because now we've got to push back against that, and we're not experts, and that's
But
hard.
so my question, because what I'm seeing, and this is another trend I'm noticing playing out, is there's a large group of classical liberals, or people, I guess it was named the IDW for lack of a good word, but people like myself, you, comedians, who managed to stay somewhat holding in the center, and essentially people on both sides think that they're useless. Like we're just useless centrists, these useless classical liberals and all of these, because they feel, and this is again a trend I'm seeing accelerate on the right, is that it's very Zelensky. Like essentially they're trying to say we have to play by their playbook, which is we fight fire with fire. Okay. And so on the right, they're saying the left holds all the institutional power. This is true. Media. Maybe there are some examples where they don't, like you saw the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We have a primarily conservative Supreme Court. Trump managed to get a lot of conservative judges elected during his time. So there's still some institutional power on the right, although largely academia, media, Hollywood, entertainment, tech, everything is and now our government is left-wing power, and they would say they have all the power, we need to fight back and use their tactics.
Yeah, but the problem is, firstly, I think seeing the culture war as a left versus right thing is misleading in so many ways. Not least, I mean, if you take the UK, all of this has happened under a Conservative government. We've had a Conservative government the past 12 years. They have presided over this. They're currently pushing through a thing called the Online Safety Bill, which is about making language safe online. They're using the language of the woke. They are part of the
UK
problem.
is nuts.
Absolutely nuts.
Nuts.
We have real issues with free speech over here.
Yeah, you really do.
You've got the First Amendment. You are protected, and also your conservatives really are conservatives. Ours aren't, actually. That's the natural ebb and flow of history, I suppose, is one reaction after the other. And I guess a lot of people will think, okay, with the excesses of the left, the response to that is let's have some excesses on the right. But that's not good. That's not good either. You know, I would love to be in a position where we can restore the idea of having non-partisan conversation about these issues. Where can we all agree? And let's not, it won't solve it. You know, replacing one illiberal movement with another that's not going to be helpful either. That's, you know. Yeah,
because now you're seeing that backlash in the states playing out where,
right.
Which state was it that just banned drag, I think? Which? Yeah, it was Tennessee. That's right. The anti-drag bill.
And what does that mean, that you ban drag even for adult performances?
The bill that passed in Tennessee last week restricts adult cabaret performances in public or in the presence of children. Okay. But it bans them from occurring within 1,000 feet of schools, public parks, or places of worship. This was passed alongside separate legislation that banned transgender minors in Tennessee from receiving gender-affirming care like puberty blockers, hormones, and surgery.
But this is the thing. It's like, it's always, you know, gender-affirming care is a danger. You know, a child who thinks they're in the wrong body should not be just mindlessly affirmed in that. Obviously, that's right. But that's not. But then, if you extend that and say, "Well, drag needs to be banned," that's just, you know, what will happen to Shakespeare plays then? You know.
I guess critics say the Tennessee bill is so constitutionally vague, there's little clarity about what falls under the jurisdiction of the ban, making business owners, performers, and others uncertain of what could come next. I mean, it doesn't sound unreasonable to me, honestly.
If it's just about kids, but then again, you know, in the UK, we have pantomime where you always have a man dressed as a woman, and those are kid shows. And, you know, the problem isn't drag. The problem isn't cross-dressing. The problem is sexualized performances for children. That's the issue.
Yeah, and I think they worried about like pride parades. So what happens at pride parades where you have people in drag on a float and people bring their kids to the pride parade? Is that banned now? So it does seem a bit vague.
Yeah, that does seem vague. I don't think kids seeing people in drag is in itself harmful. I think what's harmful is drag artists who could persist with a sexualized act in front of children. That's the problem, you know? So look, whether that bill is an example of overreach or not, I think it's an example of, I think what you can see what's coming.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not exactly sure if it's, I would have to look at the bill and probably research more, because I'm looking, again, how do you trust anything? This is an NPR article. So
right, exactly.
It could be a perfectly reasonable bill that's just been used to be hyperbolic and kind of rile everyone up.
Don't Say Gay bill, which was never called that. Right. So that's the other problem, is the fact that we can't trust media sources anymore.
No.
So
there's so many problems.
We just don't really know what we can trust.
No.
So I don't think that, honestly, I've got lots of liberal-minded friends who are now like, I can see them moving more to the right and becoming more and more intolerant of the idea of discussion. And you know, this isn't the solution. The problem we face is authoritarianism. And that problem will still be authoritarian if it comes from the right or the left. And it's not better one way or another. History teaches us that, at least. So this is why I think going back to the principles of liberalism, of freedom, of individual autonomy, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, holding fast to all of those things, and I understand the temptation to push back in a similarly illiberal way, but I just don't think it will work, because then we'll just have a whole new set of problems to deal with, and I'm exhausted. We're all knackered. So I think we just, you know, I think we should need to hold fast, and also because most people are decent people, as I say, who don't want authoritarian practices coming in. They don't want that. They don't want their freedom of speech curtailed from the left or the right. You know? And that includes artistic expression. And I think artists should be able to do what they want,
Yeah, and I think like on the right, you'll see kind of the more inflamed culture warriors. They'll say things, and I think average people are turned off by it. If they're saying things like, "Oh, transgenderism should be eradicated," for example, was a recent one. Even if you didn't, of course it'll get completely misrepresented as trans people should be eradicated. So you have that problem because now it's going to be misrepresented on the left. But the average person hears that and they're like, ugh.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I remember you guys. These are the right wingers that I grew up with. There you are. I was wondering because I never trusted, and they're like, oh, you're right wing now. I'm like, no, I don't trust these fuckers. These are the moral majority people. They're not dead yet. They're just hiding. They had to be quiet.
Reasonable, didn't they? Well, you know what? You've got to be strategic as well. I don't want to. I don't want to align myself with people who are saying really horrible things. No.
But now I'm seeing this really funny because this woman. I just am seeing this interesting battle between the kind of moderate centrists or whatever you want to call them, against these people who are calling them useless and saying like, you need to be, I see that playing out too, where there's just so many people who are like, this is what you get for aligning with a useless person who has principles.
Yeah. It's tough,
and applies them to everyone.
The hardest thing is to be principled, but consistency is really good, and that means as well, having a go at the people from, our side of this culture war. If when they do these things and say these things, I think just being consistent is the right way to win people over ultimately, because and appeal to people's good nature. I think most people, like I say, most people are decent. We've got to hold fast to that.
I feel like the way I view it all, and this is just coming to me right now as I'm talking to you, is like new money versus old money. But this is like new homophobia versus old homophobia, and new racism versus old racism. Like on the left, you have all this kind of new homophobia of, like you said, the joke of, oh, there will be no gay people left. And it's, and the weird, like transing gay people essentially. And then it triggers all of the old, the old homophobia and the old racism. You're like, oh really no. Bad.
Well, I mean, like for years, the classic homophobic thing was, oh, well, you just need to find the right girl. How do you know if you haven't tried it? All this sort of stuff. And, that's now back through gender identity ideology. They say genital preferences are transphobic. Why are you so obsessed with people's genitals? You've got there's even that gay activist who did a tutorial video to gay men on how to have oral sex with what they say is a man with a vagina. Right. But we had that for years, people trying to straighten us out.
Yeah.
And make, we've seen it all before. It's just now it's coming from the gender ideologues. So I think this
new
is
money.
New money. It's a new homophobia. Not that different, right? It's not, I mean, we could
it's just a little more flashy.
It's exactly, it's trendy. I mean, the head of the gay rights movement in this country, there's a body called Stonewall who were like the gay rights, or they were gay rights movement. The head of that said that lesbians who weren't interested in people with penises were sexual racists or akin to sexual. So that's like an old homophobe saying, "Oh, you just need to find the right dick." It's just the same thing.
That's why Ryan Long's woke versus racist video that went viral, it was just the most brilliant thing I've seen in a long time. It perfectly illustrated exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys are saying the same things. You're just saying them slightly differently.
Yeah, same thing. Like there are people who are exclusively same-sex attracted and telling them they should sleep with someone of the opposite sex who identifies as your sex. That's no different from a homophobe saying you should try it before you dismiss it. Just same thing.
I mean, I joked on Dumpster Fire, I think back in 2019, that I was like, we're like a couple news cycles away from suck my dick bigot, joking. And we're here. I saw somebody holding a sign saying that. I was like,
I've seen it as well.
No, we're here. That's not even a joke.
At a pride parade, something like TERFs can suck my dick. I was like, great. We're there then. We're there.
Yeah, we're here. No,
that's nice.
So I'm glad you wrote this book, because I do think for people who are confused about, I think that's the thing I run into the most, is people going, how did this happen? How did we get here? Normies. And it's like, well, I've been studying it for 4 years. What is it? 2023. I got sucked into this 6 years ago. I mean, or 7 years ago, and I still don't fully understand it. And I read your book, which is brilliant, and I learned something. And you have a lot of words I had to look up, by the way, Andrew, like logomachus. Is that the correct way?
Okay. Yeah.
I was what is this word? It's brilliant.
But it's exactly right for them. It's people who are playing with language to sort of mislead you. And the thing is, I hope, irrespective of those words and terms, it is accessible. I'm trying to make it is accessible. You know what I mean? I
love that the first witch that was burned was named Bridget.
Yeah, she was hanged. Actually, she was hanged.
Hanged.
That's the one in Salem. Yeah, Bridget Bishop. She was the first. Yep. And and she was baffled by it. You can read the court transcripts, and she's like, "What the hell is going on?" And I know how she feels. Jesus,
no, it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's reading about the people who went through that. It's just such a horrible story, because it's we feel like it's so long ago, but these were human beings who had done nothing wrong, and they paid the ultimate price. And like I say, I get that cancer. We're not hanging people at the moment, in that way. But honestly, lives are ruined. Lives are
ruined, and it's unsettling, because how far away are we from that? Are we just, is that where this goes?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because at so many of the feminist rallies and gatherings we've seen in public recently, there have been some attempts at violent reprisals from gender ideologues, who all turn up in their black masks with their signs saying "We are the good guys," while they're intimidating and threatening women. And I just worry about that, because we're one step short from some seriously violent thing happening, and I hope we don't get to that point. But with the kind of inflamed, violent rhetoric that they're using, we can't be that far off, can we?
That was it's kind of already happening. I think Louise Perry was posting about this story from in the UK, the young woman who was raped by, I believe they were Afghani refugees or it was 4 young refugee boys. Right. And they raped this girl, and the girls were protesting, the young girls, because she was too afraid to come back to school. And they were giving them basically sessions about what they should be wearing.
Wow.
And why, kind of lecturing them about their uniform and the appropriate way to dress, instead of addressing the violence against this woman.
Well, these sort of developments are absolutely horrible. And we just hope that they don't become, I just see signs that there've been suggestions of it. Like, for instance, at that, at the Netflix protest, the Dave Chappelle protest.
Yes.
Where the guy grabbed that comedian's sign, smashed it up and everything. It's just things like that where it's like, we're one step away from someone hitting someone, and then what? And then someone shooting someone. And then, so let's just hope, because the woke have done such a good job of dehumanizing their opponents. They don't see them as human beings. And that's why they can justify, J.K. Rowling says she gets enough death threats to paper the house with them. And, that's going to be a big house. Big house. That's not normal for any movement for death threats to be the norm.
Yeah.
That can't be normal. And it surely can't be that far away from someone acting something out.
And how are you the good guys?
And they can only really believe that if they've completely monstered all these other people. They don't see them as human beings anymore. They talk about TERFs as being literal witches and dispensable, and they write these fantasies about killing them online and post them online and all this sort of stuff. You can only really do that if you don't believe someone is human anymore. And again, history tells us that what starts with dehumanization ends with killing. It's like what Heinrich Heine says about, where they burn books, in the end they'll burn people too.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be really careful about this stuff. It's not there are historical precedents for it.
And that's why I worry about the reaction too, because it ends up, if you're fighting fire with fire, that means you're going to start dehumanizing people on the right as well. Yeah. And now we have, it's not good. Good. This has been a lovely chat.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Well, maybe next time all of this will have gone by the time we speak next, and we can talk about really silly, stupid stuff that doesn't matter, which will be great.
I look forward to just doing comedy with you or having.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us, what's your biggest defective character? I still will ask you these questions every time you come on.
Where do I begin? One of the things is I've realized is that I'm too happy to just do nothing. I quite like just sitting doing nothing and getting nothing done. And I had to delete some of these stupid games off my phone because I can waste time in ways that people don't understand. They think I'm very productive, but
you are very productive.
Well, I guess I am, but I still have these huge swathes of time that I just waste. I think I have a slightly addictive personality, so if I get into something, I obsess about it. But maybe that's related to the creative impulse as well. Like if I start a creative project, I think about nothing else and I get it done, and that's a really good thing. But then I also drink too much or indulge too much and do those other things that are bad, and I think it's all probably related in some way. But I wish I could get rid of that quality, and I wish I could stop caring about what people think. When people lie about me online, as they always do, and send all this abuse and stuff, it actually does get to me, and because I know I'm not that person that they're describing. So, but the fact that I know I'm not that person, why can't I just say to myself, well, it doesn't matter then. They're just talking about someone who doesn't exist. Why
can't some Rogan in your life?
Right, exactly.
He's so good for that. He's like post and ghost. Don't read
post
it.
Post and ghost. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Maybe I need to do, his attitude is right, isn't it? Because
no, he's so healthy. He's like the most well-adjusted person. It's amazing. He really knows. You can't take it in. I listen to the people that I respect. If you sent me an email and said, Bridget, this tweet is like, yo, are you okay? You need to dial it back. I'm worried about you. This is actually transphobic. I would hear that from you or somebody that people who are, you can't listen to people who are not,
no, of course.
In the arena, it's easy to just be kind of a spectator of this and have no stake in the game. And I also think it's very human to feel that way. We're wired to look for danger and to look for people who look for the expressions of people who don't like us, because that's how we survive. So it's not you would have to like detach from a part of your brain to just
But it also, I mustn't let it shake my faith in humanity, because I always come back to this point that I do think most people are decent.
They are.
And when I see people behave online, I think partly it's because it would never occur to me to be horrible to someone online, some stranger. It would never occur to me to send abuse to someone. So when someone does it to me, I don't really get it.
But it's probably like a 12-year-old kid, taking the piss out of you. It's like... kind of Jordan Peterson is always like, we need to like get rid of all these anonymous. I'm like, I remember watching my nephew, and he was going back and forth, and this was when he was like 12, and adults were fighting with him, and I'm like, you're fighting with a 12-year-old.
Exactly. No. This is why I think it's my flaw, is that I have to be able to and actually, so this last week I just haven't been on Twitter. I haven't done it, and it's been great. And I've been ill this week, so I haven't got as much work done as I would, but it has been really good. I haven't even wanted to check it.
Yeah.
And it's been like, so I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just use it to post about the things I need to post about in terms of publicizing stuff for work, but then just generally not go on it as often. I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have the same vibe anymore anyways.
No.
There's something,
no, exactly.
It does feel, not because of Elon, I actually feel more free, but the actual mechanisms of it feel kind of broken, like the mechanics of it, not like take away the people and who you're letting back on and whatever. It just feels, the mechanics of it feel different or weird or not like they work, like they don't feel like they're working like they used to.
And we got to remember, we don't need it. Which I think having it's a useful tool for all sorts of things. But I've been in this for so many years now, and if I still can't detach myself from it in that way, then it's not good for me. So I think just be moderate in everything.
And what's your biggest asset?
It might be the same thing. It might be the obsessive thing because it means I get stuff done. I mean, I do like, I do write the books I want to write, and I do make the shows I want to make, and I do, and it is because when I start on something, I think about it obsessively and continually, and I like things done well, So I guess that's it's one of those things that is really good for you, but also drives you crazy.
And where can we find you in your book?
So, the book is called The New Puritans. That's available now. It's also out in America now. So it's on Amazon and all the rest of it. If you just search for Andrew Doyle, and I'm on Twitter at AndrewDoyle_com. I am on Instagram, but I don't know how to use it really. So I'm not.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, so I'm not going to get involved in that. And that's the way to see me. And then I post sometimes clips from my show. I've got a show on GB News in the UK, which is a weekly show called Free Speech Nation, and I interview some really interesting people on that. But yeah, mostly just best way you can get to know me is to read the books that I've written. And I've written 2 books by Titania McGrath, and I've written 2 books by myself. One was The New Puritans, but also a book on free speech called Free Speech and Why It Matters. Well,
it's always a pleasure catching up with you, even if we're talking about the dark illiberal forces at work in our world.
Yeah, but I think in years to come, all of this stuff will be like material. Like people will look back on it and watch this podcast and be like, did they really
That's what happened.
Yeah. So it's useful. It's like a time capsule.
Yeah, right. It's all going to be freaking erratic. It's going to be erased.
Well, it might be. Yeah.
We're going to be memory hold. This is going straight into the memory hole.
Probably. Oh, well, we tried.
I adore you. Are you coming to the States anytime?
Yeah, well, I was just there, actually. I was in New York, but I'd love to come back to LA. Are you still in LA? Are you still?
We're moving to Austin.
Loads of people are moving down there.
I know. It's the new center.
Yeah. Well,
so the center must hold.
Isn't that where the new university's starting as well?
Yes, and Rogan just opened his club this week.
Oh.
More importantly.
You know what? There's all sorts of reasons I need to go there. So I will.
Yep.
And when I do, I will let you know.
Please do. We'll be happy to have you.
That'd be great.
Thank you, Andrew. Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
We are moving, so there won't be a check-in this week. Tune in next week for another riveting episode that will change your life, help you get out of your own way, and solve all the world's problems. I want to thank our composer, Jared Elias, my co-producer and cousin, Maggie, and all of you out there listening. This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. It's the dumbest line.